Hi everyone. Today we will discuss the cognitive psychology learning and memory TMA, that means tutor marked assignment. The course code is MPC 001 and assignment code is MPC 001 ASST TMA. This is for the session 2022 and 24. This paper contains 100 marks in total and all the questions are compulsory. You have to attempt all the questions. आप कोई questions छोड़ नहीं सकते. First, carefully read the guidelines. सेक्शन वन सेक्शन ए जो है उसमें 3 क्वेश्चंस दिए गए हैं. ईच क्वेश्चन कंटेन्स 15 मार्क्स, दैट मीन्स 45 मार्क्स का पहला सेक्शन है. सेक्शन बी जो है ये कंटेन करता है 5 क्वेश्चंस. ओके, तो ये हर एक क्वेश्चन जो है 25 मार्क्स है. सी सेक्शन ए जो है आपको इसका आंसर, हर एक क्वेश्चन का आंसर 1000 वर्ड्स में लिखना है. ईच 1000 वर्ड्स ईच. ठीक है. आंसर द फॉलोइंग क्वेश्चन इन 400 वर्ड्स ईच, यानी कि हर एक क्वेश्चन का आंसर 400 वर्ड्स में होना चाहिए. दैट मीन्स 1.5 पेज उतने में हो जाएगा. ना ज़्यादा बड़ा करना है ना ज़्यादा छोटा कर देना है. हाँ, और सेक्शन सी जो है वो कंटेन करता है 10 क्वेश्चंस और हर एक क्वेश्चन के 3-3 मार्क्स है. ठीक है. तो इसमें ज़्यादा नहीं लिखना है, इसमें थोड़ा थोड़ा डिफाइन करना है, यानी कि आधा पेज कर सकते हो. लाइक फ्यू लाइन्स, 5, 6, 7 लाइन्स, 50 वर्ड्स तक हो जाएगा वो. ठीक है. तो ज़्यादा डीप नहीं आपको इसमें लिखना है, ताकि मार्क्स तो 3 ही है ना इसके, तो उसी अकॉर्डिंग लिखना है आपको. नाउ सी द सेक्शन ए. आंसर द फॉलोइंग क्वेश्चन इन 1000 वर्ड्स ईच. Discuss the meaning and aspect of creativity. Explain the investment and conflicts theory of creativity. Meaning of creativity. Creativity is a goal-directed thinking which is unusual, novel, and useful. Many of such creative thinking become so important that they influence the whole human civilization and are called as historical creativity. The Mona Lisa, the laws of thermodynamics, the laws of motion, the theory of relativity are some of the ideas that were never thought before and changed the human civilization altogether in a great way in their respective spheres of life. Although we can expect its existence and importance, it has been a highly difficult task for the researchers to define creativity. Aspects of creativity. According to Guilfoyle 1986, you have to remember these dates. Okay, these are very important days. You have to remember all these dates, and also these are the some important points. You have also learned this. Okay, what are these the features of creativity? क्या क्या include करता है? Fluences, flexibility, originality, elaboration, abstractness of titles, resistance to premature closure. Now investment and conflicts theory of creativity. To understand creativity, Sternberg 2006 presented the investment and conflicts theories. The investment theory states that creativity requires the fusion of 6 different but connected resources, including intellectual powers, knowledge, thinking patterns, personality, motivation, and environment. Although the levels of these resources can influence individual variations, choosing to use a resource is frequently a more crucial factor. Intellectual skills. Now, what is intellectual skills? 3 intellectual abilities are particularly crucial. One is the synthetic ability to see problems in novel ways and break free from conventional thinking. The second is the analytical ability to determine which of one's idea are worth pursuing, and third one is practical constructual ability to be able to convince others of the value of one's idea. Now, knowledge. On the one hand, one needs to be knowledgeable enough in a field to advance it. If one does not know the location of a field, they cannot proceed past it. A person may not be able to see situations differently than they have in the past if they have a closed and thrust perspective due to lack of understanding in the topic. Thus, knowledge may either foster creativity or stifle it. Thinking styles. The chosen methods of developing Amlop- Amloping. It's, I think, mistaken here. It should be chosen methods of enveloping one's ability called thinking styles. In essence, they involve choices over how to use a person's skill set. In terms of thinking styles, a legislative style, that is a liking for thinking and a decision to think novel ways, is particularly significant for creativity. It's important to distinguish this inclination from the capacity for original thought. Someone could enjoy thinking creativity but not well, or vice versa. It also helps to become a major creative thinker if one is able to think globally as well as locally, distinguishing the forest from the trees and thereby recognizing which questions are important and which ones are not. Now, personality. Numerous studies have confirmed the significance of several personality traits for creative functioning. These qualities include but are not limited to the ability to the conquer challenge, to take calculated risk, endure ambiguity, and have self-confidence. In instance, buying low and selling high generally entails going against the grain. Thus, if one wants to think and act actively, they must be willing to break tradition. Often, creative people seek opposition. It is they decide to think in ways that contravene how others think. Now, note that none of the attributes of creative thinking is fixed. One can decide to overcome obstacles, take sensible risk, and so forth. Now, motivation. The motivation to be creative must also come from within and be task force. Research by Amabile and others have highlighted the significance of this incentive for creative work and argued that people really engage in truly creative work in a field unless they truly love it and put their attention on the task at hand rather than the benefits that may be forthcoming. A person chooses to be inspired by one thing or another. It is not something that comes naturally to them. Often, people who need to work in a certain area that does not particularly interest them will decide that given the need to work in that area, they had better find a way to make it interesting to them. They will then look for some angle on the work they need to do that makes this work appeal to rather than bore them. Environment. Finally, one needs a setting that encourages and rewards original thinking without some external assistance like a venue for presenting those thoughts. Even with all the internal resources necessary to think creatively, one may never be able to express that creativity. Confluence. When these six factors come together, creativity is thought to include more than just adding up a person's proficiency in each factor. First, regardless of the levels on other components, there may be thresholds for some components, such as knowledge, below which creativity is not feasible. Second, there may be partial compensation when a component's strength, such as motivation, offsets a component's weakness, such as environment. Third, there may be interconnections between elements like intelligence and motivation, in which case having high levels of both could multiply the effects of creativity. Okay. Now explain Sternberg's trichic theory of intelligence. This is the second question. The Sternberg trichic theory of intelligence is a comprehensive theory because it takes into account social and contextual factors apart from human abilities. The theories that came before him, in the opinion of Sternberg, were not erroneous but merely unfinished. As a result, this theory, like Gardner's, incorporates musical or artistic intelligence. Sternberg, however, divided the remaining six intelligences from Gardner's theory into two groups: analytical and practical. The three facets or subtheories of Sternberg's trichial theory are the componential subtheory, which describes the structures and mechanisms underlying intelligent behavior classified as metacognitive, performance, or knowledge acquisition components. The experiential subtheory, which suggests that intelligent behavior be interpreted along a continuum of experience from novel to highly familiar task situations. The contextual subtheory, which specifies that I, according to Starbuck, a complete explanation of intelligence entails the interaction of these three subtheories. The componential subtheory species the potential set of mental processes that underlies behavior, that is how the behavior is generated, while the contextual subtheory relates intelligence to the external world in terms of what behaviors are intelligent and where. The experiential subtheory addresses the relationship between the behavior in a given task situation and the amount of experience of the individual in that situation. Okay, now this is a table which is very important. You have to mention this also. Now these are the subtheories. About subtheories, Starbuck broke his theory down into the following three subtheories: contextual subtheory, experiential subtheory and componential subtheory. नाउ इसके बारे में थोड़ा थोड़ा डिस्कस करना है आपको, बिकॉज यू हैव टू राइट अबाउट 2 pages 1000 वर्ड्स का आपको ये आंसर लिखना है ना. देन काइंड ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस. ईच सबथेरी रिफ्लेक्ट्स अ पर्टिकुलर काइंड ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस और एबिलिटी. Practical intelligence, Starbuck called one's ability to successfully interact with the everyday world. Practical intelligence is related to the constructual subtheory. Practically intelligent people are especially adept at behaving in successful ways in their external environment. Creative intelligence, the experiential subtheory is related to creative intelligence, which is one's ability to use existing knowledge to create new ways to handle new problems or cope in new situations. Analytical intelligence, the componential subtheory is related to analytical intelligence, which is essentially academic intelligence. Analytical intelligence is used to solve problems and is the kind of intelligence that is measured by the standard IQ test. Okay, now critiques. There have been number of critiques and challenge to Starbuck's Trakehel theory of intelligence over the years. For example, educational psychologist Linda Gottfriedson says that theories lack a solid empirical basis and observes that the data used to back up the theory is meager. In knowledge, a concept that is more robust and has been better researched. Finally, Starbuck's own definitions and explanations of his terms and concepts have at times been imprecise. Discuss critically the inertness theory of language acquisition. Now, this is the third question. In 1957, Noam Chomsky put forth a critique of behavioristic theory on the basis of improvised language obtained by children during their formative years. Thus, according to this theory, children have an innate capacity to language acquisition and can discover the grammar of their language according to their own inborn grammar. Moreover, language structure appears to be preordained. According to the cognition structure, it is manifested in the presence of nouns, verbs, consonants and vowels in every language for which children are programmed or have innate qualities. However, the acquisition of native language by children is not explained in certain terms by any scholar with perfectness. It has been observed that despite complexity, children learn their native language in 5 to 6 years. This generally does not depend upon other talents and generally intellectual ability children. Language acquisition is not mere copying and does not depend on general intelligence. Therefore, it may be argued that some innate features of the mind causes universally rapid and natural acquisition of language in child. Thus, Chomsky summed up children must have an inborn faculty for acquiring language. This means the process is biologically determined, which is explained by the fact that human species has a developed kind of brain. This has provided human beings with neural circuits having linguistic information at birth itself. Hearing speech and the following interpretation with help of inborn principles or structure makes available the natural faculty called the language acquisition device LAD in the human beings. According to Chomsky, the human language shows common principles as it reflected by the presence of words for things and actions, nouns and verbs in the language of the world. The child relates his native language with underlying principles of his natural faculty. This theory, for example, says the language acquisition device LAD already contains the concept of verb tense, and the child forms the hypothesis that the past tense of verbs like played got it formed by clubbing the sound D, T or ID to the base form of the verb. That is why children show averted errors like using God for past tense or go. Undoubtedly, Chomsky knows that this process is unconscious. The path breaking Chomsky's theory is still the main theory of language acquisition, but over the period it has undergone change. To begin with, Chomsky believed that the language acquisition device contains specific knowledge about language. According to Dan Isaac Slobin, it may be more of a process mechanism to work out language rules. Evidence to support inertness theory. It appears that Chomsky proposes new theories without much empirical evidence. In his inertness theory, he said that children face poverty of stimulus, but there is no evidence to say that children actually face this problem. Unlike the minds of the adults, the minds of the children are not cluttered. An uncluttered mind can take more input and absorb it. This might be the reason behind the ability of the infants in internalizing their mother tongue at a rapid pace. Moreover, language is not something which remains static, it keeps changing, it evolves constantly and continuously. Three types of evidences to support inertness theory. Now there are three types of evidences जो inertness theory को support करती है. अब वो क्या क्या है? Let's see. Slobin has a circular out that human analysis is abnormally acclimatized to the assembly of speech. Unlike our abutting relatives, the abundant apes, we accept acquiring articulate amplitude which allows the absolute delivery of an advanced repertoire of articulate sounds. Neuroscience has additionally recognized particular regions of the mind with notable semantic capacities, prominently Broca's range and Wernicke's territory. Stroke victimized people furnish important information contingent upon the site of mind harm. They might endure a reach of dialect brokenness from issues with finding expressions to an inaptitude to Delphic syntax. Trials pointed at educating chimpanzees to convey utilizing plastic images or manual signals have demonstrated dubris. It opens to be likely that our gorilla cousins, which equipped to study distinctly expressions, have almost no syntactic capability. Pinker offers an exceptional record of this research. Sign language is a language which, instead of acoustically conveyed sound, sound patterns, uses manual communication and body language to convey meaning. This can involve simultaneously combining hand shapes orientation, and movement of the hands, arms of the body, and facial expressions. To fluidity express a speaker's thoughts, they share many similarities with spoken language, with differences between signed and spoken language. Now, limitations of Chomsky theory. Theoretically, research was done on language by Chomsky. He had a fascination with grammar, and a large portion of his writings are in depth explanations of grammatical principles. He did not research actual kids. The notion is predictable on exposing kids to language, but it ignores how kids interact with their careers. It also fails to acknowledge the roles of language or the reasons why a youngster might wish to communicate. A research of Jim, the healing son of deaf parents, was published in 1977 by Bard and Sutz. Jim's parents preferred that their son learn speech to the sign language they use to communicate. He watched a lot of television and listened to the radio, therefore receiving frequent language input. However, his progress was limited until a speech therapist was enlisted to work with him. Simply being exposed to language was not enough without the association interaction it meant later to him. Subsequent theories have placed greater emphasis on the ways in which real children develop language to fulfill their needs and interact with their environment, including other people. Okay. Now section B. इसके 400 वर्ड्स लिखना है, ठीक है. इसमें 5 क्वेश्चन है सेक्शन बी में. पहला क्वेश्चन है डिस्क्राइब द वेरियस टाइप्स ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस टेस्ट. देखो कहाँ तक इसने लिखा है, यहाँ से लेके कितना लिखना है, 500 वर्ड्स लिखना है ना इसमें. सो 400 वर्ड्स लिखना है. सो मतलब दिस इज़ इनफ यहाँ तक, हाफ पेज, हाफ और 1 पेज. Individual and group tests. Individual and group tests are categorized first based on how they are administered. According to Simber-Binet, an individual exam is one that can only be given to one person at a time. In order to classify army soldiers quickly in large numbers during World War I, such examinations were insufficient. Therefore, group intelligence tests that could be given to a number of people at once were created. Verbal or non-verbal test. Verbal paper pencil test and non-verbal performance test are two further categories of intelligence test based on the structure and substance of the test items. The examinees must be literate because the items on verbal tests are written in written language. Performance test questions are manipulative in nature and do not employ any language at all. Examinees must manipulate the objects in a certain and desired way. As a result, these exams can be successfully conducted to people who are blind, deaf, or illiterate. Some performance evaluations assess that they may be utilized effectively with people from different cultures and prefer to be referred to as cross-cultural, fair, and cultural-free exams. Stanford-Binet test. In 1937, Terman and Maud Merrill created a revised Stanford-Binet intelligence test, which was an updated version of the Stanford-Binet. The two alternative versions, the L form and the M form, each had 129 items and were included in the revision. After Terman's passing in 1960, the Stanford-Binet underwent its third version, which was mostly built by Merrill. In contrast to its predecessor, the Stanford-Binet intelligence scale from LM incorporated adequate intelligence quotient with the normative mean of 100 and a standard deviation of 16.5 points. Describe algorithms and heuristics as problem-solving techniques. Wechsler intelligence scales. In 1939, the Wechsler IQ scale was introduced. Following that, the Wechsler scale was revised repeatedly for 3 time age groups: adults 16 to 90 years, school age children 6 to 16 years, and preschoolers it is 2 to 7 years. No, it should be. I think it's misprinted here. Pre-scholars. It's pre-scholars. Wechsler's intelligence scale. According to Wechsler, intelligence is the capacity to behave consciously, think logically, and interact successfully with one's surroundings. Additionally, he thought that intelligence is distinct because it consists of qualities that are qualitatively distinct and can be assessed using a variety of tests. Additionally, factor analysis of intelligence test results indicate that intelligence is made of particular talents that group together to form higher order ability domains. Kaufman assessment scales. The initial version of the Kaufman scale, the Kaufman assessment battery for children, was created in the late 1970s and early 1980s and released in 1983. At a period when Wechsler Bennett held a largely monopolistic position in the field of intelligence testing, the purpose of this scale was to close the gap between theories and assessment of the intellect. Explain algorithms and heuristic as strategies of problem solving. Algorithms. It is the it If the clearly stated guideline for the solution is correctly followed, an algorithm is a technique that ensures the problem will be solved correctly. An algorithm will reach through the potential letter combination in an anagram problem until it found the right and useful term. The following four characteristics of an algorithm are crucial. One is an algorithm step must all be precise. In order to remove all doubts, an algorithm must be stated properly and unambiguously. And second is an algorithm has to come to an end. An algorithm's main goal is to find a solution to a problem. One won't be able to acquire any results from a process that does not stop after it is executed. Therefore, an algorithm must contain a finite number of steps in its execution. And third one is an algorithm has to work. It must offer the right solution to the issue. And fourth one is a general algorithm is necessary. It implies that every instance of the issue must be resolved, for instance, within the constraints of the programming language and the machine. A program that calculates the area of a rectangle should be able to handle all feasible rectangle dimensions. Also, utilizing an algorithm is a surefire way to get the answer. The time and effort required are so enormous that a human operator hardly ever employs it. Heuristics are broad recommendations or rules of thumb that are helpful in finding solutions to a range of issues. Heuristics are robust and all encompassing. They don't guarantee that the issue will be solved correctly. There are so many of them because of this, and if one does not work, another can be tried. Typically, general, heuristic, or situation neutral or applicable in a wide range of circumstances. Certain heuristics are employed in specialized fields, such as instructing students to check their units, disregard minor words, or use rough estimates while solving collision issues in physics using the conservation of momentum. Means and analysis. Now I think 400 वर्ड्स तो हो ही गए होंगे यहाँ तक. अगर लास्ट पे ऐड करना है ये तो छोड़ ही देना, या इफ़ यू वांट यू कैन ऐड दिस वर्किंग backward. This is important, you can add this, and analogies you can add also this. Describe the goals and research methods in cognitive psychology. Goals of research. This is understanding the objectives of cognitive psychology research is necessary to be better comprehend the various techniques employed by cognitive psychologists. These objectives in brief include data collection, analysis, theory development, creation, and testing of hypotheses, and potentially even application to context outside the study environment. Most cognitive psychologists, nevertheless, are interested in learning more than just cognition. Additionally, they aim to comprehend the what and the why of thought. In other words, researchers look for approaches to both characterize and explain cognition. Cognitive psychologists must have the leap from what is directly observed to what may be inferred regarding observations in order to get beyond descriptions. Research methods, experiments on human behavior. In controlled experimental designs, and experimenter conducts research typically in a laboratory setting. The experimenter controls as many aspects of the environmental situation as possible. There are basically two kinds of variables in any given experiment: independent variables and dependent variables. The irrelevant variables are held constant and are called controlled variables. Now, psychological research examines the connection between cognition performance and cerebral setting and events through psychobiological research. There are three general categories in which the different specialized techniques employed in psychobiological research can be divided. The first category include methods for examining a person's brain after death and linking the person's cognitive function before death to palpable brain traits. Techniques for analyzing photographs of the structure or activities in the person's brain who is known to have a certain cognitive deficiency fall under the second group. The third category includes methods for learning about brain activity while performing a cognitive task, normally such as brain imaging methods, self reports, case studies, and naturalistic observation. Studies in psychobiology and individual experiments frequently concentrate on precisely defining distinct components cognition across individuals. Researchers may use self reports, case studies, and naturalistic observation to gather richly textured information about how specific individuals think in a wide range of contexts. On the one hand, testing hypotheses is one of the main uses of experimental research. On the other hand, research using qualitative techniques is frequently quite helping for coming up with hypotheses. These techniques can be used to describe uncommon occurrences or processes that are impossible to measure. Now, this is computer stimulation and artificial intelligence. Then describe the functions of language. This is the seventh question. डिस्क्राइब करना है फंक्शंस लैंग्वेज के. पहला फंक्शन है एक्सप्रेसिव एंड कम्युनिकेटिव फंक्शन, सेकेंड इज इंटरप्रिटेटिव फंक्शन, थर्ड इज कंट्रोल फंक्शन, फोर्थ इज द फंक्शंस ऑफ रिमेंबरिंग एंड थिंकिंग, fifth is the discovery of one's name, sixth is social functions of language, seventh is creative functions. Now this is the eighth question. Explain the various speech disorders: voice disorder, speech sound disorder, fluency disorder, apraxia of speech. Now this is the section C. This is the last section. और ये सिर्फ इसके लिए हमें 50 words चाहिए. ठीक है. 10 questions are there. We have to write, and each are of 3 marks. We have to write only 50 words answer. Okay. Simultaneous and successive processing. Occipital parietal portions of the brain are linked to simultaneous processing. The survey ability, or the fact that each element is connected to every other element, is a crucial component of simultaneous processing. Thus, clarified with the following illustrations, the relationship between the forms must be fully understood in order to properly generate a diagram which given the direction. To draw a triangle above a square, that is to the left of a circle under a cross. The frontotemporal regions of the brain are thought to be involved in a successive processing, which include integrating stimuli into a certain serial order in which each element is related to the preceding one. To put it another way, each link integrated into a series can evoke only a particular chain of successive links following each other in serial order. In sequential synthesis, for instance, successive steps in language processing include decoding, creative grammar, and articulating speech. Second answer of section C is concept of IQ. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scales adaptation of Stern's idea of an intelligence quotient was the most significant advancement in the field of intelligence testing. Stern proposed the idea that an intelligence quotient (IQ) could be calculated. The term included this idea in the Stanford Binet scale in its 1916. A person's mental age is divided by his or her chronological or true age to determine their IQ. To prevent decimal fraction, the product is multiplied by 100 more times. IQ is equal to mental age by chronological age into 100. This results in approximately two-thirds of the population scoring between IQ 85 and IQ 115, and about 2.5% each above 130 and below 70. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. It involves the capability of using one's entire body or specific body parts to address issues. It is the capacity to synchronize physical motion with mental processes. Theoretically, individuals with bodily kinesthetic intelligence should learn more well when engaging in muscle activity. Example, standing up and moving around throughout the learning process, and are typically skilled in physical activities like sports or dancing. They may enjoy performing or acting, and they typically excel at creating and producing things. Instead than reading and hearing about something, they frequently learn best by really doing it. Careers that suit those with this intelligence include athletes, dancers, musicians, actors, surgeons, doctors, builders, police officers, and soldiers. Although these careers can be duplicated through virtual stimulation, they will not precede the actual physical learning that is needed in this intelligence. Okay. Now see this last line. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence is one of the 8 multiple intelligences that were proposed by Howard Gardner in his groundbreaking work Frames of Mind, the theory of multiple intelligences, single system and dual system hypothesis in multilingualism, applying what we have learned from cognitive psychological research to real world issue of how to expedite language learning is one way to approach multilingualism. Another strategy is to research multilingual people to determine if multilingualism can provide insight into how the human mind works. For instance, some cognitive psychologists are curious on how multilingual people conceptualize the many languages. The single system hypothesis postulates that two or more languages are represented in only one system or brain region. As an alternative, the dual system hypothesis contends that two or more languages are somehow represented in various systems of the mind. For instance, might German language information be stored in a physically different part of the brain than English language information? One method to answer this question is to research multilingual individuals who have suffered brain damage. Let's say a multilingual person suffers from brain damage to a certain area of the brain. The individual would have varying degrees of impairment in the various language, which is an assumption that is compatible with the dual system concept. According to the single system perspective, each language would have nearly equal degradation. This kind of research makes sense logically, however, the outcomes were not when language recovery after trauma is researched. It has been found that sometimes the first language recovers first, and other times the second or the later acquired language. The occasionally recovery is rather equal across the languages. Now, Aphasia. According to the Garrett, Hillis, and Karamazov, injury to the left hemisphere of the brain results through aphasia, a language impediment. There were various types of aphasias, including Wernicke's and Broca's. Brain injury to the left temporal lobe results in Wernicke's aphasia. The ability to hear spoken words and sentences is noticeably impaired. Wernicke's aphasia patients typically speak with smooth phonetic and syntactic but semantically incoherent speech. This coherence is demonstrated by the use of fictitious words to represent real world concepts and the incorrect use of function words in place of the content words, such as nouns and verbs. Additionally, it frequently enters the creation of illogical phrases using the basic grammar of the spoken language. These are meaningless statements such as "Yay, that was a pumpkin farthest from my thoughts," and "the scroggy press steamer ate my span steaks." The words in the first scenario make sense, but not in the way that they are used. Functional fixedness. Dunker first identified functional fixedness, which is the propensity to perceive an object and as having just one typical application. A hammer is used for various tasks such as hitting nails. We classify objects based on both their aesthetic and functional characteristics. Typically, our thinking is dominated by the prototype function. Only 43% of Dunker's participants were able to come up with a solution. He surmised that they were preoccupied with the common purpose of a box, which is to act as a container. He repeated the experiment, but this time the box is empty, and removed the candles, tacks, and mats off the table. He did this to assess dissolve their functional fixedness. Under these circumstances, all participants solved the problems by first mounting the boxes on the wall using the tracks, which then served as platforms for the candles. Here is another example of functional fixedness called the coin problem. Suppose you have 8 coins and a balance. One of the coin is a fake, and as a result it weighs less than the rest. Finding the fake coin with the balance only twice presents a hurdle. The majority of people first consider splitting the coins into 2 groups of 4 coins each. Since one of the 4-person grouping will be lighter, it must also contain the fake coin. The fake coin in the group can then be taken and weighed 2 against 2. One of the 2 groups, one will undoubtedly be lighter. However, since you have already used the balance twice, you can't tell whether of the 2 remaining coins is a fake. 15th, cultural blocks to problem solving. It includes unquestioning acceptance of the status quo, dislike of change, fantasy of humor are not productive, feelings intuitive and objective judgments are unreliable, feelings, intuition, and subjective judgments are unreliable. Problem space hypothesis. There are many difficult ways to get from an initial state to a goal state for every given problem. The complete collection of these states as produced by the legal operators is referred to the basic problem space. It is possible to see how people solve problems by applying mental operators to produce knowledge states as they progress from an initial knowledge state to a desired knowledge state. Legal manuals are encoded by mental operators. Emotion is also prohibited by restrictions if certain circumstances are met. People explore through the problem space and identify a route from the starting point to the goal state using their knowledge and various heuristic techniques such as means and analysis. These all take place inside the confines of a specific cognitive system, that is, there might be restrictions on working memory as well as on how quickly information can be stored and retrieved from long term memory. According to Newell's approach, which is founded on this problem space hypothesis, the knowledge level justifies behavior in terms of the justification an agent has for believing that particular actions would result in the accomplishment of particular goals. In this sense, knowledge serves as a tool for conduct and a means to an aim. 17th question is characteristic of difficult problems. Some of the typical characteristics of difficult problems are as given below. Intransparency, lack of clarity of the situation. Intransparency जो होता है, that means lack of clarity of the situation. Commencement opacity, confusion regarding how to start stating the problem. Continuation opacity, continuing confusion in regard to the problem as there is no clarity. Polytely, the problem has multiple goals and so reaching and selecting a particular goal is difficult. Expressiveness, inability to express the problem clearly. Opposition, transience, the problem keeps changing. Complexity, the problem is in large numbers of items, too many interrelationships and decisions. Innumerability, it is not possible to list it or qualify it. Connectivity, there are hierarchy of problems in relation to relationship, communication and allocation. Heterogeneity, the problem is not homogeneous and so difficult to handle. Dynamics, time considerations, temporal constraints, there is limitation to time factor as it has to be got done within a time period. Temporal sensitivity, the problem is influenced and affected by time factor. Phase effects, there are changes in different phases of the problem and these affect the problem from being solved. Lucian water jar problem, this table you have to make and the summary also. See the summary of this and see the table. Jar sizes of problem 1, problem 2 to problem 3, problem 4, problem 5, problem 6. Now this is the end of the video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.